Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. I'll start off by just asking questions myself, and then after I've done that, we'll open up to audience questions, which I'm sure there are plenty. So starting off with just a question about your background, I was wondering, is it true that your first career choice was to be a professional pianist?
It's not exactly true. No, I'm good amateur pianist. I like very much music, but I realized quite early, in spite of playing quite well, I had not the level of becoming a real professional. Especially, I have a lot of friends who are very good pianists. And I know that some weeks ago you received my friend Lang. Yeah, I had. He came. I see him each time he's in Paris, because you know we have a foundation, Louis Vitton Foundation, and he gave the first concert there. And last week he gave a master class, which was fantastic. He came with young kids of between 10 and 15 that were playing wonderfully, and the way he's explaining the interpretation is incredible. But okay. No, I could not be a real professional.
So then how was it that you arrived in the luxury sector?
I arrived in the luxury sector for, I would say, family reason. Because when I was managing family business, which was in a different sector, I happened to enter in contact with a group in France that was having problems, business problems. And in this group, there was Christian Dior. And I was interested by business, and I wanted to turn around this group and build on which I think was at the time the best asset. And the best asset was Christian Dior. And I was interested in Christian Dior for a long time. Because the first time, you know, you are very young, but the first time I was in New York, it's in 71. And I remember the first time I arrived at Kennedy Airport, I took a cab. And at the time, the president of the US was Richard Nixon. By the way, they were devaluating the dollar during the summer where I was there. I bought dollars and my dollars went down. But I arrived at the airport and I started to talk to the cab driver, and he loved France. And he was interested in politics. So I asked him, and he did not like Nixon. So he was talking about that. He said, you love France, so what do you know in France? Do you know the French president? It was Mr. Pompidou at the time. Nobody here remembers. But he said, no, I don't know the French president, but I know Christian Dior. And immediately, it struck me and showed that the name of Christian Dior is one of the, if not the most known all over the world in many countries. When I go to China, when I go everywhere, it's the name which is the most well known. So as far back as 71, I understood the power of a name. It's not enough, but I think it's one reason also. When by chance I was in contact with the real company, I think it's when I had the idea of doing this.
And of course, the luxury sector spans over so many different products, but what do you think the definition of luxury is?
First of all, I don't like very much the word luxury, because you have something attached to it which means show off, which means something of non-significance, something futile, something that is useless. And I think a better definition is combination of quality and creativity. It's how I define what we do. Obviously, these products, because of the very high quality they have, because of the high level of innovation, they are expensive. But the reality is really behind the appearance, behind the price. It's the quality and the innovation that people are looking for. So for me, it's the definition. And in the group, we are really concentrated on this. How can we create the most innovative products? And the creators or the scientists that work with us in the many laboratories we have, they have complete freedom to express new ideas, and after that we have to transform them in reality all over the world. But this is really luxury, and when you do that, I am often asked a question: how do you market the product? I don't know if in this room you have students in marketing, but I often meet students in marketing. And in spite of the group being #1 with the students in France, in desirability to work in the group, I always tell them, we don't do marketing. Because marketing is against what a company like us should do. Because marketing, what is marketing? Marketing is to analyze what the customer wants, and then try to follow what the customer is looking for, and test what you create, following these trends, and try to do it. We do completely differently. We create new products, and sometimes it fails, but when it's successful, the customers follow. So the marketing is not for us part of the product creation. The marketing is after. The marketing is when we have these products, how with these products, which people want, maximize the desire. Because our business, you asked a question about luxury. Luxury, for me, is how can you create desire? The most important word in our business is desire, how to create desire. And when you have the product, then you have to create good environment in the shops, and you have to present it well, you have to do good films if it's a perfume, good advertisement either in the magazine or in the internet if it's a product. So that's the way I see, and we see in my group, the way to put product in contact with the consumers.
So following on from what you were saying about how you create that desire for a product, undoubtedly the internet and those sorts of media streams have affected so many industries. I was wondering, is technology and the use of internet universally a good thing in your business sector, or are there brands that you purposely try to keep offline?
Mm-hmm. Internet is more and more important, and if I judge by the budget that we spend in the media, we are reducing gradually the amount spent in magazine to increase the spending in the internet, all the internet media. So it's more and more important, and what is key also is the fact that now, more and more, the customer, they want to first, when they want a product, they go immediately on their computer, on their telephone, and they check the product. So the way a brand is presented to the world is extremely influenced by the internet, which explains why when you are on the site of a brand, not only you see the product, but you see the history of the brand, you see the craftsmanship which is behind, and more customers are looking at that. They want to understand what is really behind the brand, and they like the product, but they want to see more. And with the internet, it's extremely easy. And also, they want to be able to buy the product easily. We have now in many countries, including the UK, you can buy a product and get it very fast in a shop. Or if you go on the internet, you see what is available in the shop in the center of London. If you want such or such product, you can find the availability of the product, which is growing faster and faster. And we more and more invest in the way we work with internet company. The problem being they are, as you see, more and more profitable, because now they get more and more smart to manage their revenues. For instance, at the beginning on Facebook, when a brand was sending a message to its followers, you could get them immediately. Today, it's not the case. When you send a message, you can get maybe 1 or 2% of your followers. Even a brand like Dior that have millions of followers, they don't get the message unless you pay something to Facebook. And then you can go on many followers. And you can even get on the competitors' followers if you pay. So if you are Dior, and if you pay Facebook, you can send your products on the followers of Chanel. And for the Facebook, it's a gold mine, because many brands are doing this, and it's one reason why they are so profitable. Not all of them are doing that yet, but more and more are going to do it.
And do you think that the mainstream platforms such as Instagram and Facebook improve the chances of new brands and young designers to establish themselves, or is it difficult because they're forced out by bigger companies who can afford much more expensive marketing campaigns such as Louis Vuitton and Dior?
Yeah, as I just explained, it's more and more important because more and more people are looking at it. So Instagram, for instance, it's not yet, you should not yet pay to get your message spread out, but it will come, I think, shortly. So when you do this, it's really extremely efficient. It's becoming extremely costly, and obviously for smaller companies, it's more difficult. But it's not something that you can absolutely live with. For instance, in the group we have a small company that is not doing any advertisement, that is not doing so far what I described on Facebook or internet or Instagram or anything else, or Snapchat or something. And this company, small, but is growing 50%, it's doubling every year, because the product is something that we have created and that encounter big success. And we cannot produce enough. It's small, but we started this from scratch, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? And this year it will do 50 million. And next year, last year it was 25, next year it will be 100, small, profitable. So you should not generalize this. It's very important, but you can succeed at least at a reasonable size at the beginning without it. If really the product is not just marketing. If you do marketing like a real consumer group, I think that is not possible. But if you produce something that is really unique, it's possible.
And would you say that Apple is now a luxury, or your definition, your improved definition of luxury, a company that?
Well, Apple is a fantastic company. And I happen to know Steve Jobs. And when he started the shops, he came to us to ask advice. And you can see many of these shops are not far from Louis Vuitton. Because he told me I would like advice and I would like to see if we can put Apple shops in the same area of Louis Vuitton. And at that time, he was criticized enormously. Everybody thought it's completely crazy to sell Apple products in a shop, because at that time he was selling the Apple products only through a wholesaler, like for instance Dell. And I remember at the time Michael Dell saying it's completely crazy, it will never work. So that's an example of contrarian thinking that is working. So I was not helping, but advising a little bit. And I must say, I was myself a little doubtful of selling. At that time, it was not iPhone, it was the iPod product in the shops. But it was working. And we discussed the future. And I asked him, do you think, Steve, that your telephone is, to answer your question about luxury, your telephone is going to work as successfully in 20 years? And he said, I don't know, because there are some evolution and some newness and so on. And just to laugh with him, I told him, you know, that's the difference between us, because my Dom Pérignon, I can guarantee you it will be sold and successful in 20 years. And that's also a luxury specificity. Luxury, one part of the products should be timeless. That's a paradox. To be successful, you have to have the combination between modernity and timelessness. And that's the combination that we try to keep, and to have a product from Louis Vuitton, which was started in the middle of 19th century. Some products are the same for many years, but also they should represent the utmost modernity. That's the combination. And voilà, that is what is fun and a key to success.
Thank you.
And so Apple, I don't think you can put it in the same category, in spite of it being fantastic, absolutely fantastic company.
Thank you very much. With a world that is constantly globalizing, How do you adapt products, luxury products, to different communities around the world? For example, how Dolce & Gabbana have recently released a collection of hijabs. Is this something that you think your own brands will do in the near future?
We tend to keep the same products everywhere. We don't think people are looking at our products to be done differently in a country from another country. I think they want to buy part of the European art de vivre, and we try to keep that. We try to show what we do in the creativity of our atelier in France, and we don't think we should modify. And obviously some products are more successful in Europe, in the US, or in the Far East, but we try to keep the same products.
Thank you. And on a different topic, somewhat related, lots of attention is of course given to China as an emerging market and very much established market. And I was wondering, how do you approach China as a market?
Well, China is one of the most important markets now, and it has evolved very fast. I remember the first time I was in China, it was in '91. It's not that far. And the first time in '91 I arrived in Beijing, there was no car and only bicycles. And we were opening the first Louis Vuitton shop. And I remember I called my team and said, "Are you sure we are going to be successful?" And they said two things. One, Louis Vuitton and the group, we are a group of pioneers. So it's good to start in a country where we have no competitor. We were the first one. And two, strangely enough, since a few weeks the shop was open, we sell the most expensive products in a country where everybody was going by bicycles. So we started there, from there, and then happened what everybody knows. And today, China is very, very big, very developed economically, and we have around 30 Louis Vuitton shops, for instance, and many others, and the market is good. There are some questions about China now because of the growth and because of the problem that you have seen on the stock market there and the currency. But I think the analysts, the observers are under-evaluating the real fundamentals of the Chinese economy. I think it's still growing 6-7%, which is quite high. The consumption is going well, it's growing, and the state is really in charge for a lot of reasons that you may not like, but is in charge of making the economy following a path which is oriented towards growth, and they have a lot of reserve. So I am quite confident that China will stay as the number 2 global economy, and for us it will continue to be really powerful. You have a lot of, here in the UK, for instance, a lot of travelers coming from China. So I'm not very concerned, but there are changes. A few years ago, when you go to Japan, for instance, you have no Chinese. You had no Chinese. Today, when you go to Japan, because of the low Japan currency and because of the strong yuan, you have a lot of Chinese. And you have more and more Chinese traveling all over the world. And the economy is, I think, aimed to continued growth, maybe not 10% as it was in the past, but between 5 and 7, which is quite substantial. So I'm confident. And the Chinese, to answer a question about the product and the market, is more and more educated. At the beginning, a lot of brands were successful relatively easily because it was new. But the Chinese, they have learned very fast. And now they are like the US consumer. They are very, very informed and very selective. So it's a challenging market, but for strong brands, it's full of potential.
Which other markets do you see in the next few years that you think that luxury groups will be fighting over?
Well, for the economy, you have two big engines, which is the US and China. But in the developed market, the economy is going to continue to be good. As a friend of mine told me some months ago, when I asked him about what do you think of the future of the economy, he is very confident. But he said, for the next 20 years, I think we'll have 80% of good years. We'll have 20% of bad years. And in the 20, we have 10 very bad and 10 just bad. But I am not able to tell you exactly when the bad will arrive. So I tend to agree to that. Because today, the world globally is growing relatively well, but you have this uncertainty about the level of money available and the money created by the banks. The European Bank, the Federal Reserve, they are printing money, tons of money. So what will happen if this printing of money is not sufficient to really stimulate the economy? And for the time being, it's what we see. The economy in Europe is so-so, in spite of the interest rate being negative, and in spite of big influx of money. So what will be the consequence? Will it create the next crisis? Personally, I think it's not unlikely that within the next few years there is a new crisis of a different type because of this amount of money, which is unbelievably high, and because of the level of debt of many countries. So we have to adapt. But also, when you have a crisis, we tried as a business manager of the group, of LVMH, to take advantage of it. Because we have very little debt, and when the market is becoming to be less good, we can, in the past, we went through many crises. We are able to grow faster than the competition, and sometimes also it's a good period to find opportunities. But you have to be patient and try to avoid to invest when everything is too expensive. Because you see, people in the stock market, when it's going to grow fast, they try to buy. And on the opposite, when it's going down, the people try to sell faster and faster, which is strange. But it's good to be sometime contrarian to that. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Thank you so much. There's just a couple more questions from me before I'll move on to questions from the audience. You were knighted by Prince Charles in 2012 for your services to Britain, and I was wondering on your opinion on what difference it will make to LVMH if Britain decides to stay or leave the European Union.
I think for the group, economically, it will not make a big difference. As an observer of the situation, I will not interfere, because I am not a UK citizen, with a political decision of the UK. But from outside, I cannot imagine that the UK take advantage economically of a movement like this. I think a movement like this will not benefit to the UK economically, because it will separate your country from the rest of Europe, with all the trade which is involved, with all the exchange that will be more difficult. So it will create, I think, and again, it's seen from outside, and I don't want to take part of the debate, but it should be economically negative for the UK. So it's all I can say. But we have the same people in France that also want France to quit not only Europe, but also the currency. It's strange for me to see that, you know, in politics, if I take the French example, we use as an argument things and logic that everybody knows is not going to work. But it is good in terms of rhetoric and power, because it's different. When in France, politicians say we should stop frontiers, it's stupid, but it has some power on the media, and most of the time, person who says that knows that it's completely unrealistic, but it gives her some audience. It's the difference with business. You know, in business you see the results. Politics, well, it can just be ideas, and who knows where this idea will lead.
Well, we shall see the result. The last question from me before moving on is just that the Financial Times reported recently that you may be interested in acquiring Burberry, and I was just wondering if you could comment on this.
Well, I will be very open. I am not very interested. It's a magnificent company, but it's not on our agenda.
Thank you very much. With that, I will move to questions from the audience, so please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question. I will go first to the member on the front row in the glass. Oh, you're both in glasses. The one nearest to me.
Hi, thanks for your remarks. Congratulations on the new Fondation Louis Vuitton's home in Paris. I'm wondering if you can speak a bit about both the foundation and your personal collecting habits, and if you can specifically answer the question, what makes a great art collection?
The art collection. The collection, yeah. Well, the art collection, you know, in the foundation that we have a collection, which is part collection of the foundation, part my own collection. And we have also temporary exhibition twice a year with association with museum. For instance, this year we have announced we'll have a fantastic exhibition with the collection that was bought at the beginning of the 20th century by this Russian magnate, Shtukin, and which is now in Russia, in the museum in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. And they have masterpieces from painter of that time that nobody wanted to buy. They have masterpieces from Matisse, Monet, Gauguin. We will have 150 paintings coming to Paris. It will be open in October this year. It will last 3 or 4 months, so you should come and have a look. I think it will last 4 months, and we are expecting 1 million visitors in the museum. So this is really something that we try to do twice a year. And for the selection of the art that we own, we are doing it for maybe 25 years. And we try to, we have advice. We have a very, very good curator who had been the artistic director of the Musée de la Ville de Paris, very, very knowledgeable, and that helps because she knows the artist, and she knows also the good collection, and she is helping us to buy. But I cannot describe all the process. It's her that really knows the artist and the living artist, and that put us in contact with them. We commission also some of the artists to do things specifically for the foundation. It's very, very interesting to work with them, and that's a long process.
Thank you for your question. We'll now go for the member on the aisle row just there.
You mentioned quantitative easing, and you mentioned the threat of money printing and the possibility of another crisis on the horizon. What are the 2 or 3 things you most worry about for the future of your business? Do you worry about the cost of the materials that you use to make your goods? Do you worry about consumer appetite for luxury spending? If you take a long view, if you think about 10 years or 20 years, what are the things that most concern you for the future of LVMH?
First of all, I think in a business which is successful, as is this business, I always say to my team, you should be thinking that the worst is coming. And you should be you should never be satisfied. And you should be always frightened and on the qui-vive. In a way, the state of mind is to be positive, paranoid. And always in a situation, think of what can go wrong. And always puts you in question. Is what we do really enough? Are we doing the good innovations? Are we managing in the right direction? What can go bad? And in our business, what is really important is to keep the level of innovation. So for the long term, I think we have the teams that assure us to create enough new invention, new products to keep on with the growth of the market. But it's a constant quest. We see maybe every year between 20 and 25% of new products, and we have to look at them in every detail to make sure that the level of innovation is really sufficient. Because the tendency in a group that work well is sometimes, and we try to avoid it, some form of auto-satisfaction. And when you see the results from the press, I prefer, frankly, to have some critics than to have, as we did during the last release of the numbers, people everywhere saying, oh, it's fantastic, the numbers are great, and blah, 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 which is not good for the state of mind. At the beginning, when I started the group, we did a turnaround. And I think to be really good long-term, you should keep that same state of mind. As a company, even if it's successful, should be managed in a way as if it could get under within the next 12 months. And so it gives you a different perspective in terms of investment, in terms of hiring people, in terms of new acquisition. So that's the state of mind. So with this, that we try really to keep, and we try to see what the future big problems can be. And I see, as I said, maybe a crisis like the one in 2008 coming within the next 5 to 10 years. But a crisis like this for our type of activities, which is linked to consumption, is something we can manage. And not only we can manage, but we can also, in some cases, take advantage of it. You have seen during the last crisis, some investors, should take some US investors like Warren Buffett, they did at a time where everybody thought the world was going to collapse. In fact, they did the best investment possible. So at our scale, in our market, we did the same. And we bought shares in other companies when everybody was thinking that's the end of the luxury business, that's the end of almost everything. Stock market went down. I remember in 2009, having bought for the group shares of LVMH at 39. Today it's what, 150. So, and people were selling because of the general mentality. When you opened the newspaper, you saw that's really the end. Everybody was depressed. So on one hand, we try to be thinking of the worst, but on the other hand, we are optimistic. I try to be optimistic long term, but pessimistic short term. And that's a good state of mind, I think.
Thank you for your question. We'll now go to the question at the back.
Which brand of champagne made by your group is your favourite?
My favorite brand?
Your favorite brand of champagne?
My favorite brand is Dom Pérignon.
Thank you very much. We'll now go for a question from the member there.
Thank you for coming to Oxford Uni. My name is Penny Pan. I'm an MBA student at Science Business School, and I'm from China. So you mentioned China is an important strategic market for your brand. It has been and it will be, but it's quite obvious the brand has doing poorly in recent years in your main market, China. There are many challenges, among which I would pick up a few: the massive problem of counterfeits, the changing governmental policy for corruption, the rising trend for affordable luxury, where you see competing brands where like a Coach, Burberry are doing really well, where LV is perceived as something we don't buy anymore. Is becoming, we call 土豪, we only buy them, people who are rich but lowly, poorly educated. So it seems that the desire in China is gone, something you mentioned very important to your product design, your marketing strategy. So how, in your mind, the brand will face those challenges in coming years in China market? Thank you.
Okay, Chinese is an important market, and there are challenges. We try to be following the rules in every country we operate. And in China, we are not producing anything. So we avoid, in doing that, some problems that can happen in some factories where, independently of the government, maybe they use workers too young and things like that. That we have a clear policy in the group to really not do anything that is not complying with the best practice. For the counterfeiting, it's clear that China is one of the major sources of the counterfeiting. And we try to fight, but it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult because it's a huge market, and it's a profitable market, which is in the hands, most of the time, of organized crime. So even if the Chinese government officially want to help, even for them it's difficult. Even in China, where there is a clear direction, it's difficult. And for our teams, it's difficult also, because we don't want to expose our teams directly to people that can really can really harm them. So we have the help of the government, and sometimes we are successful. I have many examples of entire factories producing counterfeiting that, with the help of the Chinese government, we destroy. But the problem is when we destroy one factory, they rebuild it some kilometers further. So it's not very efficient. And with the internet, it's even more complicated, because you have a lot of sites. You can go with the name of a brand, and you think that you buy the real product, but in reality you buy a fake. And there also we fight them, but you have a ton of them, and when some we are successful in making disappear, new one appear. So it's a permanent, a constant fight. We spend in the group around 100 million a year to fight that worldwide. It's really a big problem. For organized crime, it's the second resources after drug trafficking, counterfeiting. So it's huge. And so it's why it's so difficult to fight. And in some country, the government is more efficient. For instance, in France, it's efficient. Years ago, if you were going to because they find interesting way. Years ago, if you went to the beaches in the south of France, you had people walking with counterfeiting when you were sunbathing and offering products. And for years, they were just arresting the guy, and after 2 days, the guy was free. So he came back. And they found something much more efficient now when somebody like that is working, because they passed a law to do it. They seize the products and they destroy it. And now the counterfeiting sale on the beaches in the south of France has almost disappeared. But if you go the next country in Italy, they did not do it, because there is some old links between counterfeiters and some part of the authorities. I'll give you an example. I was in Venice the other day, in front of our Louis Vuitton shop. You have counterfeiter installed selling the products. And so what do? We call the police, and the police come. But before coming, they make a lot of noise for 15 minutes. So the guys pack the products, they go out, and when the police arrive, nobody is left. What can we do? And 2 hours later, they are back. And so we call the police, and they pack, and it's completely inefficient. So it depends on the country, but it's a big problem.
Thank you for your question. If we now go for the member about 3 rows back on this side.
Given the improved relationship between Iran and the West and the lifting of sanctions, especially between banks and financial intermediaries, would you look at tapping into the Iranian market and having formal representatives there, given the huge demand that exists for luxury brands and the need for the Iranians to spend the great amounts on such luxury products? Thank you.
No, I know that the Iranian people like very much our products. Yes. And I went myself years ago in Iran, before the revolution. It was another time. And today we have already a lot of contacts, and I think we are going to start with one of our brands, which is in fact a brand which is selling other brand, but you see Sephora. You know Sephora?
Yes.
The beauty chain. It's very successful, and we are just about to start with this, maybe next year in Iran. But I am perfectly aware of the very good taste of Iranian people, and I know there is a very good market, and we are ready if everything is possible, following the rules of our different countries. But we would like very much to go, and if we go, the team of my group will go with me, and we would be delighted to go back.
We look forward to welcoming you.
Thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for this afternoon. Monsieur Arnault, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure for us all to welcome you here. If I could ask everyone to remain seated whilst Monsieur Arnault, myself, and his guests leave. And please join me in thanking one final time Bernard Arnault.